the Brand Ed Podcast with Robbie Fowler, episode 30, 6 steps to get the most out of a conference or online summit after it's over. Welcome to the Brand Ed Podcast, the show that helps you position, pitch, and profit from your brand. I believe the chaos and confusion around what branding is, why it matters for your business, and how to translate your brand into profit leads to overspending on marketing, underperforming businesses, and overwhelmed leaders. Stay tuned to discover how to position your brand in the market, pitch your business with purpose, and profit from a life-giving brand that blesses you and your customers. Welcome to this episode of the Brand Ed Podcast. We are finishing, as I'm recording this, it's day 6 of a unbelievably amazing 7-day summit, online summit my good friend Daniela Nica has put on called Monetize Your Genius. And that got me thinking about what are some takeaways when you go to a conference or an online summit, right? We're in a pandemic, so there's probably going to be more online summits. This one has been absolutely amazing. And I've been watching people get amazing takeaways, and you can just see it in the chat boxes that are going with all of these topics and speakers. I know I've learned a ton, and it's so fun to see other people learning. So I wanted to just take an episode real quick to explore how do we not waste that momentum? How do we not waste what we've learned in those takeaways coming out of a conference or an online summit? So I'm just going to walk through 6 steps to help you get the most out of a conference or online summit after it's over. So let's jump in. So you've gone to that conference or that online summit. It's amazing. You had a fantastic time. You've got pages and pages of notes. The question becomes, now what? One of the common things that most of us feel coming out of a good conference or an online summit, a phrase you'll hear a lot is like, man, this is like drinking from a fire hose. And even if you buy like a VIP pass or something where you get access to those recordings, that's fantastic because you can go back and watch them. But it still can leave us like feeling both excited and a little overwhelmed at all of the information we learn. So I put together 6 steps to help you get the most out of a conference or online summit after it's over. Number 1, pick your top 3 takeaways. Okay. And here you're just going to answer the question, what was most helpful for me? Okay. So you're debriefing yourself a little bit, and you're just going to stop and say, make yourself write down what was most helpful for you. 3 top takeaways. Okay. Don't worry if you choose the wrong ones or the right ones. Just pick 3 top takeaways. Okay. Now, if you're a starter, so I'm thinking of this Daniela's Monetize Your Genius Summit that is going on right now as I'm recording this. And lots of those folks are starters, right? They're just getting started. So if you go to a conference or, an online summit and you're a starter, one way to help you pick the top 3 takeaways, here's what you want to ask. What's going to get me my first sell? Okay, what's going to get me my first sell? Think about takeaways around that, because if you're just getting started, that's the first goal, right? We want to start earning revenue to see if this is a viable business that we have. So how do you pick your top 3 takeaways if you're a starter? You're going to say, of all of the things I've learned, what's going to help me get my first sell? Okay. The online summit, that I've been a part of, an example of this would be one of my good friends, Jeff, amazing copywriter. I'm going to have him on the show actually next week. He'll be on the podcast. But one of the things one of his talks was on his 6P email sequence, and this is the email sequence, he teaches and he uses all the time. if I was a starter, that would be a great takeaway to say, one of the things that's going to help me get my first sale is if I will go use his, 6P email sequence, right? So that'd be one of my top takeaways if I was a starter. Like, that's going to help me get to a sale fast. Okay, if you're a grower, right? You already have a business and your business is growing. How do you figure out what your top 3 takeaways are? You might say, what's going to help me get to my first or my next big splash? Okay, not just an individual sale, but that big splash. Maybe it's a big event. Maybe it's a big product. Maybe it's something you want to launch, right? It's already on your radar. It's something that as your business is growing, hey, I want to go tackle this next. I want to do this next. This is a bigger splash. This is not, I just want to write another blog post or send out another email. This is something that's going to create a big splash for your business. So if you're a grower, you might say, okay, top of all the takeaways, my top 3 takeaways, what's going to help me get to that splash? Okay. And if maybe you're not a starter, you're a grower, like you're a master level guru, right? Maybe you're a speaker or something at the conference or event, right? Hopefully we're all still learners. We can still learn. And you might ask yourself, when it comes to takeaways, what's going to help me scale, right? What's going to help me maybe create a new revenue stream? Okay. So if you're at that, master phase, you can say, what are 3 takeaways that's going to help me create that new revenue stream, idea that I got while I was at the conference or summit, or the one I've been kicking around a little bit that I kind of brought into the conference or summit in my mind. Like, I think I want to add that revenue stream. Well, top 3 takeaways around that. Or if you're at that master level, it can be, who do I want to partner with? So maybe you go to the conference and you're like, hey, most of this material was kind of at the fundamentals level. I know most of those fundamentals. It's not that it's not that I know everything, but a lot of this was material that I already covered. That's why they brought me in as a speaker. Okay, well, then you might ask, who do I want to partner with? 3 names, 3 people, right? That might be 3 takeaways. All of those other takeaways are fantastic. Keep them in a safe place. Sometimes I call that a parking lot. So on a piece of paper or in some place you take notes online, a Word document, however you do that, create one that's called a parking lot for that event and keep all your other ones there because you can always go back and use those. But we want to bring some focus so that we're not overwhelmed. That whole, hey, this is so great. It's like drinking from a fire hose. That's a great analogy. It's not the best way to get a drink though, right? Is to stand in front of a fire hose. So we want to bring some focus. So number 1 of the 6 steps, pick your top 3 takeaways. What was most helpful for you? Pick your top 3. Next, you want to connect your top 3 takeaways that you just did in step 1 to outcomes and then action steps for your business. Okay. You want to connect those 3 takeaways to outcomes and then action steps for your business. So you want to be asking yourself, hey, with those 3 takeaways, what can my business look like 30 days from now, or 3 months from now, or 1 year from now, if I actually take action and apply those 3 takeaways? And what this will do is it will help you narrow your outcomes. So if you had 3 takeaways and there's going to be 3 very different outcomes for your business, if you apply those, you may want to go back and reevaluate your takeaway because you may want to say, hey, I just want to focus on like 1 outcome. I could have 3 outcomes if I did those things from my takeaway, but I want to make sure 1 of them happens before I worry about making sure 3 of them happen. So you're just going to ask yourself, okay, there's my takeaways. Now let me connect the dots to outcomes. What can my business look like 30 days from now, 3 months from now, and 1 year from now if I actually apply those 3 takeaways? And then what you would do is say, okay, if the outcome is going to be outcome A, if I apply that takeaway, how do I work backwards from there, right? That's how you get your action steps. That's one of the ways and one of the hacks you can do to get your action steps. So maybe it's like, I'm going to launch a podcast. Okay, that was one of my big takeaways. I listened to Danny's session and I'm going to launch a podcast because it's really going to help my speaking business. Then you would want to say, okay, what's an outcome? An outcome is 3 months from now, my podcast will be live. Okay, well, let's work backwards from there. What do you need to do? Well, I need to name it. I need to get artwork created, etc. Right? So you would start to work back to make sure that the takeaway produces an outcome, and you've got action steps to get from here to that outcome. Okay? So that's step 2. Step 1, pick your top 3 takeaways. Step 2, connect your 3 takeaways to actual outcomes so you can see how that's going to look. Because we can get excited about things and not play it out to go, well, that's going to be helpful, if I got a new business card, but that's not really going to produce the outcome that I want. And so these kind of checks and balances helps you think through that. All right, step number 3. Now, connect your top 3 takeaways, not just to your outcomes. That was step 2. Now, connect it to your customers or to your audience. And I love this because this gets really, really helpful. Connect it to your customers. Okay, so up until now, in those first 2 steps, and like most of us, when we've attended a great conference or an online summit, right? We when we say that statement, I was like drinking from a fire hose. Well, naturally, we've been focused on our own business, right? Like, this is so helpful for my business. Now I want you to turn your attention to your customers. Okay. So those 3 takeaways, the outcomes in step 2, the action steps you're going to put in place. It's also helpful to say, by taking these steps, how will my customers benefit? Not just my business, but how will my customers benefit? Okay. I would write those down. And that's a great thing to share with your audience. Like, hey, I learned, I just attended this. Here were some takeaways. I'm going to focus on this next because it's going to help, speakers like you or whatever do this, that, or the other. But you want to connect those to, benefits that your customers are going to get. So how will your customers benefit from those 3 takeaways? That will also keep you motivated and excited, right? Because if you're in business to serve other people, that's going to keep that in front of you. Because, starting something, these 3 takeaways are probably around something that it's been a challenge for you, an obstacle, a struggle. And it can be, easy to come back from the conference on that little mountaintop experience, like going to camp, summer camp, week-long summer camp, and reality hits and we lose focus, we lose energy, right? So keep the customer benefit in front of you. This is going to help me help the people I want to help and serve. Okay. So connect your top 3 to your customers. Okay. So that was number 1, you're picking 3 takeaways. Number 2, you're going to take those takeaways and connect them to outcomes for you, right? For your business. And then number 3, you're going to connect those 3 takeaways to your customers. How's that going to benefit your customers? Okay. Step number 4. Next, you want to connect those top 3 takeaways to an expert that you liked. So this online summit that is finishing up tomorrow, that I mentioned, the Monetize Your Genius Summit, right? There's 45 different, I think, experts on there. And if you go to a conference, it's often the same thing. Maybe there's, 5 speakers, 10 speakers, depends on how big the conference is. But the part of the challenge is, yes, you can meet lots of new experts. I would encourage you to connect to maybe your, again, top 3. You might even narrow that down. The reason you want to do that is, while there's lots and lots of great advice and lots of great people giving that advice, it can be very distracting. One of the biggest challenges to, running and growing a business is working in the business versus working on the business. And then when you're trying to work on the business, all of these, the more voices you have. Now, I'm a learner. I'm all for learning. But the more voices that you actually attach to and listen to consistently, it can be a challenge. So I would encourage you, maybe there were, 15 great talks or speakers. Well, pick 3. Again, back to those 3 takeaways and the outcomes that you're after and the benefits you want to bring to your customers. What 3 experts are going to help me stay focused and get there? Okay. And here's some other tips to go along with that. I would do a little recon on the quote unquote expert. there can be, because here's what I found. There are those who are experts at execution or doing, right? But just remember, great doers don't always equate to great equippers. So you could be an amazing public speaker. That doesn't necessarily mean you're at producing other great public speakers. And the reality is the opposite can be true. You could be a mediocre speaker who is fantastic at producing amazing speakers. Same thing with writing, on and on, the list goes. Usually they'll say, don't follow an expert who hasn't done it. Well, like life's just not quite that black and white. So I would do a little recon and just find out, is this person not just good at what they do? Or are they good at making others good at that? Because that's what you're in there for, right? So do a little recon, ask yourself some questions, choose your friends wisely, choose your experts wisely. And so do a little research and find out, hey, is this somebody, whose values and stuff I'm going to resonate with? In other words, I'm not going to choose them as an expert I want to follow or listen to, and then turn the corner and be very disappointed, like, oh, I didn't know they were going to ask me to do that or want me to do this. I'm not cool, marketing that way or trying to grow with those tactics or something like that. So just do a little recon, but pick 3 experts, right, from the summit or from the conference that you can really listen to. You can listen to lots of people, but these are folks like you're going to consider kind of attaching yourself to, pay attention to, a podcast, blog post, you're on their email list. You're taking their advice, you're tracking with them. Maybe you're reaching out on social media and talking to them, right? You're kind of becoming like, this is somebody whose tribe or community I think I would like to be in. Okay, that was number 4. Number 5, now you want to take your top 3 takeaways and you want to connect those takeaways back to you. Okay, here's what I mean. You're like, wait, haven't we already done that? Here's what I mean. You want to connect those 3 takeaways back to you. This gets missed so often. We're drawn to, pragmatism, practical steps. We love that. I love that. The how-to, just show me how to go do this. I love, learning from so-and-so's session because he or she shared, these really simple ways to go do this, and it brought great clarity. Well, connect those 3 takeaways, your top 3 takeaways, to you. You need to ask yourself, who will you become by following through on your big 3? So you have those 3 takeaways, right? And we said we want to connect those to 3 outcomes. Though, particularly in the personal brand space, you and your business are not 2 separate things. You are the business, right? You're the brand. So you want to ask yourself, who will you become if you follow through on those big 3? Because it can be easy to go, man, that's going to make me a number 1 selling author or whatever. And you can kind of forget maybe some of your own weaknesses or personality flaws, like, hey, you love the spotlight to the point where, you've made some choices that aren't great choices in your past in pursuit of the spotlight. Don't forget that. So you just want to at least take a moment to ask yourself, hey, if I go after those 3 takeaways, is that going to help me be the kind of person I also want to be 3 months from now, 30 days from now, 3 months from now, a year from now? Or is that just going to make me more successful and more miserable? You get the idea. So connect your 3 takeaways to who you will become. And then maybe you write this down. What excites you about becoming that person that those 3 takeaways are going to help you become? And what frightens you about becoming that person? Like, write down some dangers, like, oop, I need to keep an eye out to make sure, I'm not becoming a workaholic. I'm not, whatever the case may be. Okay. I'm not neglecting my, spouse or kids or whatever that is. So don't forget, like, your character, integrity, personal growth along the way. You going after some things in your business, it's going to affect you as a person. So connect those 3 takeaways to you. Who will you become by following through on those 3 big takeaways? And then number 6, connect your top 3, those 3 takeaways, the outcomes you want, the, action steps you're going to take, the person you're hoping to become, how that's going to help your customers, the expert you want to follow. Connect those top 3 to some accountability, right? Accountability. Again, that whole fire hose analogy, it's easy to get excited. Then we come back home, we feel a little bit alone. We're by ourselves and there's no more chat box, right? There's no more people at the conference where we're hanging out and bouncing ideas off of each other. So connect those 3 back to some accountability, because again, one of the biggest dangers, particularly for personal brands or businesses, is that we become distracted. We lose focus. We can have the, squirrel syndrome, the flashy, shiny object syndrome. So take those top 3, get some accountability, debrief with a trusted mentor, debrief with a friend or a spouse, like, hey, here's 3 takeaways. And you don't have to get into all the details. You can just tell them, like, I went to this conference or I was on this online summit, bunch of great ideas. But what I really feel, led to go do, or what I think is really going to help my business grow, is this thing. I want to get this thing done in the next 30 days or 3 months or year, whatever. Like, can you help me stay focused on that? So connect that, debrief with a trusted mentor, friend, spouse, coach, consultant, and then give them the permission, right? Invite them to check in and follow up. Even if you have to help them, like you set a reminder in your calendar to reach back out and say, hey, today you're supposed to ask me about this. You're supposed to follow up or check in on me about this. Okay, so those are really quick, just 6 quick steps to get the most out of a conference or online summit after it's over, right? The excitement fades a little bit. We're now going, we learned all this stuff. How do I manage it all? How do I prioritize it all? 1, pick top 3 takeaways. What was most helpful for you? 2, connect those takeaways to outcomes and then kind of deconstruct that back to action steps. 3, connect your top 3 now back to your customers. How's it going to actually help your customers? 4, connect the top 3 takeaways to an expert. Pick a few experts to listen to. You can't listen to everybody. It gets confusing and it's really not helpful. Number 5, connect those 3 takeaways back to you. At least ask yourself, who will I be becoming? Who am I going to be 30 days, 3 months, a year from now if I go do those takeaways, right? And just make a note of what excites you about that and then maybe what scares you about that. And then lastly, connect those top 3 to some accountability, right? Get some help on what that can look like for you. I got a couple of things I wanted to tell you about in the show notes. So thanks so much for listening to this episode. Here's a few things. I will also say this. And those takeaways that I just mentioned, I got a couple of friends that have some other great thoughts, I think, that are super helpful for kind of how to get the most out of a conference. One of those, I know my good friend Mike Kim has recorded at least one podcast episode on kind of some of what he does when he goes to an event or conference, particularly if it's a conference you're paying for, right? This is like an investment in you and in your business. If you're going to spend, $100, $200, $500 or more dollars on a conference. So I'll put that in the show notes if you want to go check that out and add his advice to that. I think that'd be great. And then my other friend, Lauren Davis, she loves events. She helps put events on, and she's got some great thoughts on, kind of how those conferences and things have impacted her business and what she looks to do when she goes to one of those. So I'll put a link to that also in the show notes so you have that. And lastly, I want to tell you about 2 great resources for you. I'll put these in the show notes as well. I've got a new resource. It's called the 4 Ways to Make a Great First Impression with Your Website. It's a little cheat sheet. It's going to show you 4 ways to make a great first impression with your website. I'll put a link in the show notes to that if that's a helpful resource. You're looking to do more with your website or you don't have one yet, then go grab that 4 ways to make a great first impression with your website. You're going to love that little cheat sheet. Also, if you have a question for the podcast, maybe it's around websites for your personal brand, how you connect where you want to go with your personal brand to the website piece, to your brand and actually earning money from your website. I know there's lots of confusion. It can be really, really intimidating. Should I go with a funnel builder website? Do I need a single page website? What website platform do I need? Et cetera, et cetera. Reach out. I'll put a link to that. You can just go to robbyf.com/podcast question. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And you just drop me your question and I'll try to answer those on the podcast as questions come in. So if you got a question about that, it's another great way to get your question answered. Lastly, I've got something really amazing coming up to help you with your website, and just stay tuned. I think it's really, really going to help you. It's going to give you the opportunity to make some significant progress on your website, particularly if you don't have one yet or you're not real happy with the one you have. Just stay tuned, right? Because this is really going to be super, super amazing for you. In the meantime, there's lots of other ways to connect. I'd love to connect. I'm on the different social platforms. All of those links are in the show notes. And I hope this episode helps you think about what to do after the amazing conference or event. Take advantage of those giveaways. And again, the links to my friends' shows that I mentioned about how they do conferences. And I'll see you on the next episode with my good friend Jeff, copywriter. It's going to be amazing. And he's got some really cool opportunities coming up. I'll tell you more about that on the next episode. In the meantime, go and build a life-giving brand.